Imagine an aircraft shaped like a perfect disc, hovering silently, then vanishing in a blink. Now imagine claims that such craft were not aliens, but human, built in secret by Nazi Germany. For decades the story of the Haunebu and other Nazi flying saucers has mixed wartime reports, bizarre testimonies, wartime science, and outright hoaxes. Tonight we'll pull the thread, through archives, eyewitness reports, engineering reality and myth, and ask a blunt question: did the Nazis build spacecraft, or did stories build themselves around them? In this episode I'll give you a balanced, page-turning account, the documented wartime phenomena that sparked the rumors, the engineers and experiments that fed them, the post-war claims and confusions, and why this subject still divides people. I'll show the strongest evidence for both sides, and I'll name the sources so you can judge for yourself. Stick around until the end. I'll make a clear call to action and a challenge to the chat. Pick your side and defend it. Stories that link Nazis and UFOs didn't spring up out of nowhere. They grew from three facts. First, the real German advances in rocketry and jets, the V-1, V-2, and the Me-262. Second, a series of unexplained aerial phenomena seen by wartime aircrews known as Foo Fighters. And third, post-war secrecy and the scramble for German science. The combination made fertile ground for extraordinary claims. Let's start with the phenomenon most contemporaries actually reported: Foo Fighters. Pilots in 1944 and 1945 described bright, round lights that followed aircraft, danced around them, and sometimes seemed to move with intent. These weren't widely publicized UFOs in the modern sense, they were wartime mysteries, investigated by intelligence and physicists because they might be enemy technology. Scientists and military debriefings considered everything from electrostatic plasma to optical illusions. Important takeaway: Foo Fighters were real reports, made by trained flyers in combat. But real reports do not automatically equal advanced Nazi discs. That leap requires physical documentation, credible designs, test records, or surviving hardware, and that is what's missing. By the 1950s and 60s the story hardened into named machines: Haunebu 1, 2, 3, the Vril craft, the Andromeda device, and the famous Die Glocke, the Bell. Alleged schematics show circular, multi-deck discs with concentric rings and sometimes huge diameters. Popular accounts list exotic power sources like Zerum 525 or vacuum/implosion drives. Where did these detailed claims come from? Many of the post-war narratives can be traced to a small number of fringe authors and alleged leaked documents. A key figure in the Die Glocke story was a Polish journalist, Igor Witkowski, who in 2000 published claims based on purported interrogation transcripts. Over time these claims were amplified in books, magazines, and the new medium of documentary television. Part of the myth draws on real, weird-looking German engineering experiments. Victor Schauberger, an Austrian naturalist and inventor, described vortex and implosion-based ideas and built devices called repulsines. He had supporters and skeptics. He also attracted attention from some in Germany during the 1930s and 40s. But Schauberger's work, when we inspect technical records, does not equal a working anti-gravity spacecraft. Engineers in wartime Germany were experimenting at the margins of aerodynamics, circular wing experiments, rotary devices, and novel engine configurations. Some experimental aircraft attempted unconventional planforms, the Horten flying wings, for example. But experimental unusual shapes are not proof of spacecraft. Real engineering constraints, metallurgy, power density, fuel, control systems, are the hard boundaries. A disk that hovers without a plausible power source is a red flag. Let's step through the core Haunebu claims one by one: alleged sizes and timelines, propulsion systems, test flights, and bases. Designs and sizes. Popular schematics show multiple Haunebu variants: small two-man prototypes, WWII, medium, combat, craft, Haunebu 2, and enormous ocean-going or orbital machines, Haunebu 3. These drawings first appear in post-war UFO literature, model kits, and the 1970s, 90s fringe press, not in wartime Luftwaffe archives. Power and propulsion claims. The story of exotic power, mercurial liquids like Zerum 525, implosion-based engines, even zero-point energy, are borrowed from speculative physics and pulp. They're seductive because they sound scientific, but they lack laboratory replication. Test flights. Enthusiasts claim secret bases in the Harz Mountains, near Peenemünde, or underground at Der Ries. The problem is that the best documented testing facilities for real secret weapons, Peenemünde for rockets, for example, have meticulous records and were examined by Allied investigators after the war. No verifiable test flight logs or wreckage tied to the Haunebu turn up in those records. In short, sensational drawings and after-the-fact testimonies exist, but independent hardware and rigorous test documentation do not. Die Glocke, the bell, is a separate but closely intertwined myth. According to authors like Igor Witkowski, it was a bell-shaped device that produced strange radiation effects, time anomalies, and fatal test results. Die Glocke became a central piece of the Nazi UFO puzzle because it sounded scientific and sinister. Serious researchers are clear: Witkowski's sources, alleged interrogation transcripts and Polish intelligence files, have not been produced for independent verification. Historians who have checked the radical claims find a string of unsupported steps, attractive narrative, ambiguous wartime remains, such as concrete pylons known as the henge, and leaps from industrial ruins to science fiction tech. Popular mechanics, and many academic historians, caution that Die Glocke sits on the border between wartime secrecy and post-war fantasy. Why do stories like Haunebu and Die Glocke survive, loudly, in books, TV documentaries, model kits, and video games? There are several reasons. First, the real technological mystique of Nazi Germany. They did produce technical breakthroughs that seemed like science fiction in their time, and that creates a plausibility bias. Second, secrecy and Operation Paperclip. After the war, Allied powers quietly recruited German scientists. Where there is secrecy, rumor grows. Third, narrative appeal, Nazi occultism, heroic tech, lost worlds. These are powerful storytelling ingredients. They sell books and videos. Cultural drivers. Fourth, confirmation bias and modern media. Once something becomes a meme, it's easy to find evidence, mislabel photos, or interpret ambiguous wartime imagery as proof. Historians of the UFO phenomenon note how Cold War anxieties, popular culture, and the archival gaps combine to make the Nazi UFO myth tenacious. Let's be fair and list the strongest points offered by proponents. Eyewitness testimony. Veterans and some post-war witnesses claim to have seen circular craft or secret tests. Some odd engineering experiments existed, Schauberger, experimental discs, that could be misrepresented or exaggerated. Alleged documents and post-war books claim direct evidence, and some enthusiasts point to radar anomalies and declassified Cold War files as suggestive. These are not trivial points. A historian's job is to weigh testimony against documentation and mechanics. Where testimony is plentiful but material evidence is absent, cautious conclusions are necessary. So where does the balance tip? The best supported historical facts are these: Nazi Germany pursued advanced aeronautics and rocketry, pilots reported unusual lights in the sky during World War II, and post-war secrecy fueled speculative narratives. The weakest link is the concrete proof for functional, anti-gravity, disc-shaped spacecraft built and flown by Nazi engineers. After decades of intense interest, no authenticated wreckage, verified test logs, or trusted blueprints have surfaced in academic archives. That absence is meaningful. Still, mystery remains. Foo Fighters were unexplained, some inventors flirted with radical ideas, wartime records are incomplete. That uncertainty opens space for alternate readings, and for conspiracy narratives to flourish. Here's my reading. The Haunebu is a fascinating cultural myth born of real wartime technology, real physics experiments, and a post-war hunger for hidden knowledge. There's no accepted, verifiable evidence that the Nazis built working spacecraft. But the story says a lot about how we process secrecy, technology, and terror. Now I want you, the Matt Knows community, to decide. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and do it now if you want more balanced, evidence-forward videos on conspiracies and history. Drop your vote in the comments, fact, fiction, or both, and give your best one-paragraph argument. I'll pin the most persuasive replies and open a live debate stream next week where we'll invite one proponent and one skeptic to argue live. Don't just watch, join the conversation. Thanks for watching. I'm Matt, and that's what I know. See you in the comments.